Recording in progress.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome to FedRAC meeting for the month of May. Today is May 24th. Right now it's at 5:02. I call this meeting to order. And for the record, my name is Huang Tran, Chair of FedRAC. On my left is Council President Linda Kochmar, Council Member Jack Walsh. On my right, Committee Member Erica Norton and Deputy Mayor Honda. Do we have any other council member join us via
I'm
Zoom?
here.
Oh, hi, Lydia.
She's from the ceiling.
Welcome. And
Thank you.
for the record, committee member Jack Dovey is excused. Thank you. All right. Do we have any public comments?
No public comment.
No public comments. Okay, moving on to committee business. Item A, approval of summary minutes for April 26, 2022.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you, Susan. I'm sorry, you guys.
It's okay, she said I move approval.
I move to approve the meeting minutes.
And I will second that. Is there any question, discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. For the record, the matter passed 2-0. We are moving on to item B, MOU with Federal Way Public School for Sahali track replacement. Autumn will be joining us via Zoom. Autumn?
Good evening, Chair Tran, Deputy Mayor Honda, Council Member Kochmar, and committee members. I am going to start with a presentation that includes all or both items B and C, so that way we can go over them. They are sort of commingled, and as I go through my presentation, that'll make more sense. The item before you today is the Sahali track replacement. This is made up of two different parts. Tonight is the proposal acceptance from Field Turf USA and Benyon Sports, as well as the Federal Way Public Schools MOU. A little bit of background on this is in the summer of 2013, City of Federal Way and Federal Way Public Schools worked together to repair the asphalt underlayment and to replace the entire rubberized track surface. The existing asphalt underlayment and rubberized track surface at Sahali is beyond its life expectancy and has failed. In March of 2021, with council approval, City of Federal Way Park staff applied for the King County Youth and Amateur Sports Grant for $250,000 to help with the cost of replacing the track. On July 23rd, 2021, King County Youth and Amateur Sports awarded the city $150,000 in grant funds to support the project, and the award was accepted by council on September 28th, 2021. Upon final signing of the King County Youth and Amateur Sports grants in October 2021, staff requested proposals from Field Turf USA and Benyon Sports through the King County Directors Association, or KCBA, purchasing program, which the city's been a member of since 1990. Once we received proposals, the City of Federal Way and Federal Way Public Schools came to an agreement on which Field Turf USA and Benyon Sports product is preferred for the Sahali track replacement, as well as commitment from Federal Way Public Schools to provide funding for 50% of the project. Before you this evening, within your packet, you'll find the Field Turf USA proposal. City of Federal Way and Federal Way Public Schools, upon further research, came to the conclusion that the BSS 200 was a better option and provided a longer lifespan for the track replacement. The cost to the city is going to be, with tax, a total of $338,000, $321.90. Future costs associated with this track replacement is in about 5 years. In 2027, we will be budgeting approximately $20,000 for a full cleaning and restriping. This will take the track surface back to a brand new looking track and provide longevity. In 2032 to 2034, it is recommended that we budget approximately $185,000 for a new top coat, structural spray, restriping, and a full cleaning as well. And then again, in 2037 to 2039, we'll do an additional full cleaning and restriping. And then in 2047, which is approximately 25 years, the full lifespan of a track of this nature, we will budget approximately $406,000 due to inflation for a full track replacement at the end of its life expectancy. In regards to the Federal Way Public Schools MOU, the Federal Way Public Schools has committed to funding 50% of the proposed project, which is $160,095.95. As described in the MOU before you, the City of Federal Way will coordinate and manage the project, and Federal Way Public Schools will provide the additional funding needed to bring this project forward. At this time, I will open up to any questions, and then I will move forward to both policy questions for items B and C once we go through any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Autumn. Does anybody have any question?
Yeah.
I can see you. Oh,
Yeah,
go ahead.
no. A couple of questions, Autumn. I mean, from the looks here, it is a different surface that's going to be applied this time than what it was in 2013 with the longer life expectancy. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then also in the with the maintenance in what, in 10 years or something like that?
We have about 5 years,
Or-
10 years, 15 years, and 25 years.
Okay.
We'll have different maintenance steps that we need to be preparing for.
All right. Are we anticipating that the school district will be helping with that cost at that time as well?
At this time, it's not anticipated that the school district will be providing additional funding for those maintenance costs.
Okay. All right. Is there a reason why not on that?
I'm happy to look into it. I don't have a reason as to why not, or if those discussions have come up currently, but I can circle back with Jason Gerwin and John and provide an answer for you guys from the school district.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
And one thing, just to come back to the 2013, we didn't replace the underlayment in 2013. The asphalt underlayment, it was just a top coat. So it was sort of extending the life expectancy and trying to do a repair. This will be a full replacement.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor Honda.
Thank you. Autumn, when will this work be done?
We are currently on schedule for the end of August. The goal is to get it done before school and the fall sports seasons are in full season again.
So if anything is scheduled then on that location, it won't be disrupted in August?
Correct. We've been working with the school district as we've been preparing this proposal and MOU to have some dates aligned, so that way, once all of this is approved and pen is to paper, we can make some quick decisions, and the school district is in alignment with the end of August for this.
So when the track, how long will it take to do the work?
If I remember correctly, it'll be about 2 weeks, but I will confirm that.
Okay, that's not too bad. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Jack, you have the light on. You
Oh.
still have additional question? No? Okay.
I move to forward the proposed MOU with Federal Way Public Schools for Sahali track replacement to the June 7, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
And I will second that. Any other question or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 2-0. Autumn, you have the next one.
Item C, it was presented along with item B. So at this point in time, if there isn't any further questions, we can move a policy question forward.
Thank you. Council members, have any other question for Autumn before we make a motion? Seeing none?
I move to forward the acceptance of the Sahali track replacement proposal from Benyon Sports through the KCDA to the June 7, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
And I'll second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the matter passed 2-0. Thank you for that. Now we are moving on to item D, authorization to add one senior traffic reviewer position. EJ?
Good evening, Chair, Council President, Deputy Mayor, members of council. have to phone a friend here.
We should have a red phone sitting on there every time we need help.
Thank you, Thomas. So tonight I am here to discuss the authorization to add one senior traffic reviewer position within the Traffic Division of Public Works. If the slide advances. So the policy question is, should the City Council authorize the addition of one FTE senior traffic reviewer position? Some background information regarding this is currently we have one traffic reviewer that's responsible for the review work of all development applications. To put that into context, it's not a straight comparison because everyone has a little bit different responsibilities. The planning division has 6 reviewers that feed work to this one person, and the development services has 4 people that are feeding work. Review work, in theory, is supposed to encompass approximately 50% of the responsibilities of this staff member. You'll see the responsibilities on the next page. And there is no overlap or responsibility to other staff. Practically speaking, we do have some cross-training that happens to other people that have dedicated full-time positions. So our adaptive operations manager that runs the entire signal system is one person that's back trained on this, and then the person that handles all of the work with King County maintenance and operations is also trained to do this. So they don't really have the time to do it, but that's kind of what we have as far as being able to backfill. So current responsibilities is on the slide in front of you. So reviewing development applications is in theory, 50% of their work. This position's also the city's long-range traffic planner. They update the transportation plan and the city's comp plan. As you're well aware, that's a process that's currently ongoing. They perform all the traffic modeling for the city for both public and private. They do the review work for in-house projects as well, and then they also administer the traffic demand model. To put this into a little bit of context for you, the yellow text is typically one position. So Kent, Auburn, Renton, that is one job in and of itself. Red, the traffic modeling, is typically a second FTE. The review work and traffic calming and support of internal projects is usually a third. And then the green is typically a fourth. So you can see this is typically in most cities of our size, this is 5 positions. We've got it as 1. And the development community has let us know that. So the current workload leveling process that we use is, like I mentioned before, we use other staff to complete their reviews as their workload allows. And then additionally, that's not sufficient. So we cannot review timely. So we have contracts with 3 separate engineering firms to outsource that work to. Practically speaking, we do not get 1-for-1 with the outsourced work. So this same position is overseeing the contract, dealing with contract administration, reviewing billing, everything that goes along with that. There's also, especially with traffic, as with some of the other disciplines, there's an internal component to it. So how does it tie into other projects that are being proposed currently? And, for example, if we have 2 projects that are next door to each other, city staff will know that, but a third-party reviewer won't. So, how do we, if we have one developer that's proposing to shut down the northbound side of the road and a second developer that's proposing to shut down the southbound side of the road, effectively the 2 developments can close the road with our third-party reviewers never knowing it. And that fundamentally doesn't work in a traffic system. So there's still an internal component that has to be done even when we outsource the review work. So some feedback from the development community. We have been hearing for a long time frustration with the review queue length, the amount of time it takes us to turn around an application. We also hear frustration with our third-party reviewers from the development community with a lack of consistency. We do our best to cross-check that and make sure it doesn't happen, but it kind of goes back to that trying to get the work through the system. We don't want to be reviewing projects a second time if we're having a third-party company do it, but trying to make sure we have consistency it takes time. So our established target review timeline, which is something that's within the city budget, is 35 days from receipt of a complete submission. Our review timelines range from 45 days to 6 months to get a first review. That's what it is. Doesn't matter if it's third party or internal. Those are the numbers. So the italics text is a comment, I'll say, that we got from a developer last week. And I'll spare reading it, but in short, it's pretty pointed that traffic reviews are holding up their project. So our permit history, just looking at needs, 2022 is projected on this chart. So we've had 176 through the end of April applications this year, just from January through April. So just looking back, that's 5 months of the year, round numbers, and forward projecting it gets us to 423 for this year. To be clear, this is only new private sector permits and applications and concurrency and street mods. It's not pre-application meetings, it's not resubmissions. So on average, a project is 3 submissions. So the number of times a reviewer is touching the project is actually triple what's on your screen. Some projects, depending on the developer and how their engineering firm does and what, if they submit a plan that doesn't have a streetlight design and we do 2 reviews of that, and then the 3rd review includes a streetlight design, some of the projects are 4, 5, 6 reviews, practically speaking, and that's on the developers based on what they submit. So that is counting each as 1, not as 5 or 6. So workload, looking backwards at those permits, an average traffic application is 4 to 120 hours of review time for the entire project, so including all of those resubmissions. That's a total for the project, not per submission. And largely it depends on complexity. Certainly if you're doing 2 residential houses on a street, that's a very different level of review than if you're building a, PAPE, the new equipment vendor that's going off of 320th. The average review time, just as a knowledge point, is 22 hours. For 2022, that's, using those projected numbers, that's 9,300 hours of a review time as a city we need to provide between us and our consultants. With 1.5, so this includes adding the position we're talking about, we're still only at 3,130 hours. So we're nowhere near being able to say no third-party consultants. We're still going to very heavily rely on them. Based on the numbers, and that's fine. We are not proposing to go above that at this point. So budget summary for the first 12 months is approximately $143,000. That will not be the 2022 number just because we're hiring someone mid-year. It'll be less than that, but that is a fully loaded position with benefits and everything else that goes into it from HR. And, the good part about this is the application fees for the development, they cover this cost. So right now, we're just turning around and writing a check to the third-party reviewer. So there's no impact to the overall program. It's just, are we paying a staff member, or are we paying consultants is really the conversation that we're having. So the options considered are to authorize the addition of 1 FTE position in the form of the senior traffic reviewer, or do not authorize the addition and provide direction to staff. The mayor's recommendation is option 1, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, EJ.
I don't have a question.
Okay,
Thank you, EJ.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I have 2 questions. Does every permit require a traffic review? And what education requirements are needed for someone to apply for this?
So every permit, no. So interior building permits, for example, do not. Change in use, so it may be for an existing building, but if you're changing an office building into a daycare, for example, that would. So I don't know a number off the top of my head. I'm going to say it's probably 50 to 60% of the permits that come in the door do require traffic engineering review. As far as education, its professional engineering license is the preferred. It, at a minimum level, is a bachelor's degree in engineering and/or traffic engineering.
So if you could have the world, how many people would you need to do this? How many more people?
just, mathematically, where it's 1.5 gets us about a third of the review time. So we would need triple that to be able to do everything in-house. That does not include inspection work that would go alongside that. So it's probably actually a little higher than that. Realistically, though, I would not propose going to that at this point. I think that's something to aspire to as a city that, and ultimately I do recognize that this funding is there and, where it's going to consultants, not necessarily city staff. So it's a net zero conversation. But that being said, the advantage to the consultants that we're using is it takes out the unpredictability of the economy and in the market and everything else that goes with that. That, as work picks up or decreases, we can tailor that to the consultants that we're using and kind of ebb and flow their workload as opposed to trying to figure out what to do with a staff member when we don't have permits. So I think at this point, practically speaking, I'm confident with this recommendation and continuing to use third party. I think as the city continues to grow, this is a conversation we're going to need to keep having, that we probably do need to increase this again at some point in the future.
One more question. Does this delay someone getting a permit if they need a traffic review? And
Yes.
by how long?
So that's a really complicated question.
Okay.
So
Sorry.
it depends on and I get it's not intended to be, but it depends on how complete their application is and how complex all the other components are. Certainly there's applications out there where the traffic, and that change of use example that I use, changing an office to a daycare, outside of the life safety stuff with it inside the daycare, be it fire or the building department, the rest of the permitting process for that example is pretty clean cut. There's not a lot of physical construction going on. There's not a lot of physical change. So the majority of the review is traffic. It's what's the impacts to the traffic system. You went from an office building where everyone shows up at 9 a.m. to now people are dropping off kids at 7 a.m. And what does that do? So that traffic is the lion's share of that review. Other projects, be it that two-family house example I used, traffic is pretty cut and dry, that it's check and make sure there's no impacts and that the driveway's not in the middle of an intersection type of a thing, and then it's good. So that if there's impacts to the wetlands on the development, if there's massing, if there's stormwater requirements, they're all going to be substantially more involved than traffic in that example. As far as delays, yes, 10 developers are going to get 10 different answers, but I will tell you it's significant.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Walsh.
Yeah, you answered some of my questions already. One question, why, it sounds like this is a no-brainer. Why haven't we done this already?
That's a good question. So we advocated for it a couple of times in the past, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It has reached a tipping point where we are hearing about it very loudly from the development community currently, and we've reached the point we need to do something. So frankly, that's the reason.
Okay. Obviously, one of the things we want to do is to make sure that we are, that our departments work well with developers and with
Absolutely.
the public and are consumer friendly, so to speak. You say that this would make it so that about a third of it would be being done in-house and 2/3 would still be, even with the ebbs and flows of the economy, would it not make sense to maybe bring 2 people in rather than 1, and there'd still be, still be taking care of things if things did, or not if, but eventually things do go up and down. But
It very well might, and I think at this point I'd request that to be part of the budget conversation more towards the end of the year, and there's 2 reasons why. One is just with the other positions that we are having a seriously hard time finding qualified people to work right now, and employees, and recruitment is a huge challenge. Finding 1 person to fill this position is a feat in and of itself. Finding 2 is even more. So I think taking steps towards it makes a lot more sense, and then potentially, see where we land, see where the numbers land, and come back as part of the budget process, and to your point, possibly add a second, or second and third, depending on what the numbers are. We also, realistically, we have 0.5 FTEs that are doing this today, and, to bring someone in, there is a training and onboarding component of this. And I want to be a little cognizant about the amount of time we're taking away from reviewing the current workload to train up someone new. And that, our experience is that exponentially increases when you add a second person. So I think it makes more sense to get one person up to speed, and then, assuming the economy stays strong, it probably makes sense to come back as part of the budget process and regroup on this conversation. But to your point, I do want to make sure that we're not effectively stopping traffic review for 3 or 4 months to train up new people too.
Okay, that makes sense. So, and at any rate, it's budget neutral.
It is.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Well, thank you. Councilmember Lydia Asefa Dawson.
She's muted.
You muted.
Sorry.
There you
Yeah,
go.
my questions were asked, so thank you so much. I just forgot to lower my hand.
Okay, good. Okay, before we make the motion, I just want to say that I do support the idea from Deputy Mayor Honda and Councilmember Wash about perhaps we should look into, instead of just one position, but additional position later on, because per your presentation, it looked like this position can review up to maybe 3,000 hours worth of review, but then we still have to outsource the rest of them to the third party. So maybe that's something we can have a discussion later on.
Yeah, I think let us get the first person on board would be my request, and then we certainly can come back. And the three, just to be clear, the 3,000 includes the 0.5 that's doing it today. So 2078 is the average hours for an employee. So that's effectively times 1.5 to get round numbers to 3,000.
Okay, very good, thank you. Council President?
Thank you. AJ, so if we're having trouble finding people, is that because we don't allow them to work at home? What is it we can do to?
I don't know if there's one fell answer for that question. I think there's a lot of different reasons. The economy is really strong right now. There is a lot, especially for engineering. ASCE released a study recently that we're, as a country, we're putting out something like 40% of the number of engineers as those that are retiring. So certainly that plays into it, that, there's a large portion of the workforce that is leaving. I also know that there are some very significant mega projects going on in the Puget Sound between Sound Transit, and frankly, WashDOT has more in projects than Sound Transit does right now. So engineers are in demand.
I wonder if we could target people who have retired and bring them back part-time.
I'm all for that.
Okay. I think we're ready.
And I do have a question. Would it be possible to raise the amount of money that you're offering? Would that be feasible, or is that something that would not, if you raise the salary a little bit, do you think that would help? Or would it be possible with the amount of money that's coming in? Or are you already at the top of?
So we're at the top of what we can support within
Okay.
the permit fee side of it. I know this is also one of the positions that was studied in pretty great detail as part of the salary survey. So
Okay.
it did get adjusted, and that's reflected in this pricing to be fairly comparable. Now, I will flat out tell you, it is not comparable to private sector.
Yeah, that's-
Private sector, you can go get 75 grand more a year, and
Right,
it is
well,
what
that's,
it is.
when I saw that, I thought, that doesn't look right, but, okay, I understand
Yeah.
now, thank you. So, can I make a motion?
Yes, please.
Okay. I move to forward option 1 to the June 7 consent agenda for approval.
Now second that. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 2-0. Thank you, AJ.
Thank you.
And now we are moving on to item E, AP voucher from April 16, 2022 to May 15, 2022, and payroll vouchers from the 1st of April until the end of April of 22. Chase?
Good
Welcome.
evening, Council Chair Tran, Council President Honda, Deputy Mayor, and Council Committee members. Before you are the AP vouchers in the amount of $2,428,783.80. Payroll vouchers in the amount of $3,961,234.06. And that's comparable to prior months. And we sent out an email prior to the meeting answering some of the questions that Council President Honda had, and we'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have.
Deputy Mayor Honda, would you satisfied with the response from staff?
Yeah, I am, thank you.
Thank you. Just check it.
Yeah.
Yes, go.
Just a quick question, and this may be more that AJ or John or somebody would be answering. I don't know. I see that there's a lot of accounts payable to Home Depot and Lowe's and stuff like that. I mean, have we negotiated discounts with some of our regular suppliers?
Yeah, we got a state discount with Home
Okay.
Depot and Lowe's.
All right. I figured the same. Just wanted to. Sure. So, all right. That's my only question.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I move to forward the vouchers to the June 7, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Second. Any other questions? Seeing none. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 2-0. Thank you, Jace.
Yeah.
We are now moving on to item F, ordinance 2021-2022 biennium budget amendment. Director Room.
Thank you. We're getting close to a record, perhaps on a brief meeting. I don't want to goof us up. In your packet, you have got a proposed budget amendment, and I would like to work well with you. And I think we can do a better job of. I don't think that the memo and the tables are self-explanatory. But we come to you periodically with budget amendments, and whenever we're in the middle of a council meeting and City Council approves something that also needs some budget approved, we need to, that would require a budget ordinance, which requires 2 hearings. And I'm not going to raise my hand and say, wait, stop, we want to have a motion for a budget ordinance and have 2 hearings. We don't want to do that. What we want to do is we want to collect them and periodically come to you and get caught up. Does that make sense? And there's usually 2 categories. If there are new grants or new revenues coming in, why it makes perfect sense to add some new revenue, and then you can approve the authorization of the expenditures that spend it. And then the other thing is when we've got prior year projects or things going on in one year and they're not done. We might have POs issued or we might have the project started. Why we want to go ahead and just carry that budget authorization forward. And in your packet, you've got 2 tables. And I would like to, in the future, to do a better job rather than having to explain this. However, this is a good start. And if you can give me whatever feedback you'd like, that'll work well. There's one table that just has budget adjustments for the general fund. And if I just simply highlight some of them in green and say, these are the ones where we know we have gotten some new revenue. In community development, we know we've got additional passport fees. There's a new commerce grant. There is a court grant that I bet you remember approving a while back. And in the police seizure funds, why there's some revenue and it's restricted and it can only be used for certain things. So it makes perfect sense to free that up and recognize the revenue and the associated expenses. The other items, all of them, are stuff that we're carrying forward. In particular, there in the middle of the page, you'll see that there's Arpa expenditures. Well, you approved that in last year's budget and we haven't spent it, so of course it makes perfect sense. And the same thing is true of all those in smaller amounts. So what we're doing is we're asking you to authorize additional spending in the general fund for 2 reasons. We've got new revenue, or it's last year's money we didn't spend. Also, there is a second table that covers all of the other funds. And the same situation applies there. Now, there's only a couple items there where there's some new grants. And there's a whole bunch of things where the money was approved previously and it just hasn't been spent. We need to carry it forward. And one thing about other funds, if it's not in the general fund, it's restricted revenue. It's only going to be spent for those specific purposes. So that also makes perfect sense. You want to see that it is spent according to its purpose. So it's a fairly simple, straightforward process. I don't think our memo explains that well. It requires me to come up and give this short talk. But if that makes sense, I'd like to work well and make sure that we improve our process so that it's also more transparent to the public when they read their packet and they don't tune into the council chamber presentation. I'm open to questions and any feedback, and staff recommends approval. Every department head is holding their breath because they've heard you approve some things, and we do need to make sure that the budget gets caught up so that their monthly reports that they manage to catch up, if that makes sense.
Thank you for your presentation. Does anybody have any question for Steve? Deputy Mayor?
So I have a question. The last few days, there's been a number of reports about the possible recession that's coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I said possible, because that's what the news reporters are saying. Can you talk about that and how the city is able to respond to that? When we, when we vote for this kind of stuff, we need to know that we're going to have the funding to cover it.
Sure, and I think that my next presentation on the monthly financial report will cover that. But in general, we approve an adopted budget based on forecasted revenue, and so that's why I probably almost bore you to tears every single month when I bring revenue projections or revenue graphs where I'm tracking to see how it's coming. How is our revenue coming in versus budget and against prior year? And that's why I'm watching sales tax and utility tax and REIT every month. Because if it wasn't coming in, then we would need to say, oh, well, we need to scale back our expenses. So there's two components. We're watching revenue, and then also every department is managing their budget, managing their spending to budget. And so that's why we want to do a good job of keeping the reports that they use to manage their departments pretty much current.
So if a recession is coming, and our revenue drops, how soon that would, I'm sure you.
Sure.
I'm sure you're watching that.
Well, sure, and you all know this city, and you know that our principal revenues are our sales tax and our property tax. So how would we start seeing a recession? We would start seeing a drop, perhaps, in spending. That would be a result of people's incomes dropping. Now, if prices go up, then the tax on sales would go up. So that's kind of a factor. But I think my best answer is just continued vigilance, because the way that we would see it, the activity in the retail economy and also in the real estate economy and in the assessed valuations. If those were to drop, that would impact our property tax. Although property tax is much more capped and stable. But to mitigate our concerns about recession is to keep our thumb on the pulse of what's going on with the city's economy. And the two biggest indicators are those two, property tax and sales tax. Although we have a lot of other funding sources to keep track of. The source of grant funding might be a concern of ours. There's a lot of things to keep track of, and all the departments are being vigilant.
Thank you.
How satisfying is that answer for you? I don't give you any guarantees. But do we have an ability to manage? Do we have an ability to manage our expenses? To some degree, we do. There's some things are manageable and some things aren't.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have to think about it.
Have any question?
Director Graham, I know I bug you about this every time I see you, and I'm going to do it again.
We're calibrating our
So,
sensibilities.
this is just me. I'm gently pushing, which I don't do gently. Anyway, so when I met with you in, it was either early December or late November of 2021, I told you about my concerns about what was going to be happening in the economy that I see right now. You know, prices are insane.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the fact that every time I drive by a gas station, the price goes up every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Some people would refer to that as hyperinflation when the price changes on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
And what I'm asking is, what, as a city, can we do to plan ahead for this? And perhaps dreams of things like really expensive, non-essential projects that we've recently approved, in my opinion. Is there a way that we can have an honest discussion about this? Or is it not appropriate to have an honest discussion? And you know, I know that I'm not exactly tactful, but I don't think this is a time for tact. I think it's a time to face reality. You know, what we're looking at, if this continues, is going to impact us as a city. And it just concerns me that, you know, the reason why our budget is doing well is because of our ARPA grant this year that we received last year. We don't have another ARPA grant coming, as far as I know. Is that true? Okay. Have you done any forecasting? Have you looked ahead and said, okay, well, here's the trend. Let's see, you know, if this trend continues, what can we do to mitigate that? Is that something that is that part of what we do as a city?
It is. We have a structure and a process, and there's a short-term process and a longer-term process. In the short term, we've adopted a budget, and we have three principal departments that are having to face right now their monthly expense reports, their actuals to budget. PD uses gas, and Parks uses gas, and Public Works does. So within the existing current budget, we're looking every month at our expenses, and we're asking ourselves, are we going to stay within budget? Do we have some ability to do some course corrections? And we have the mayor and the city administrator and all the department heads to work on that problem. Well, and so that's not at policy level yet. However, you have a responsibility to ask us and report back to you. How are we doing, right? So that's the short term. And as far as forecasting, we are going to be facing that. We are probably in June or July going to have to start making our assumptions. Right now, we're 30 months out. We have a 24-month biennium that we're going to have to prepare a budget for, but that's 6 months away. So 30 months out, we have to start thinking, what do we think about inflation in terms of revenue and expenses? So we're going to have to start having discussions with that internally. We'll bring them to you, our thoughts and our recommendations, and we're not there yet. But I think we do have a process for that, which also doesn't give you any guarantees that we have an answer. I'm sorry.
Okay. So, okay, here's an example of what I'm talking about. So when you brought up gasoline or diesel, I'm not sure if the city uses both, one or the other. So does the city purchase large volumes of it and store it and then use it? Or do you purchase it? Or I don't see police cars at the gas station. So I'm assuming that the city purchases gas. Do you have like a preset price that you pay? Is that something that you can negotiate? This is just
Right.
my brain working, because what I did was when our federal administration went and input a bunch of currency into the revenue stream, I thought, that's lowering the value of the dollar. So I'm going to go out and spend as much money as I can on supplies, because what has happened is the supplies that I use for my company have doubled in price since I bought way more than I needed last year. I bought so much that I filled up my entire garage, and I bought a whole bunch of laundry detergent. I went to Costco and spent like $10,000, and I know that's crazy to people, but you know what? It's gone up 75% since I purchased it last year. So I prepared, and I know I talked to you about this already, and I'm asking, is this something that's possible? Can we do that as a city? Can we buy things ahead of time or before they go up much further? Gas is predicted to be up to $10 a gallon. I've been seeing that. They've been telling us to prepare for it on mainstream media news. Is that something as a city that we can say, we're gonna go and look ahead and say, we're gonna prepare for this so that we don't end up spending $10 a gallon next year.
I think I'm at the place where I'm going to give half an answer, and then I'm going to see if I can phone a friend across the room. One of the good things about municipal government is we have really strict and regimented purchasing guidelines, but also government contracts that we can piggyback on and that sort of thing.
Okay.
We don't have an operations yard, we don't have our own facility, we don't have our storage tank and dispensing facility, so we don't have in-house, we don't have that personal capacity. It's something we would love to have, and that's in our future. And EJ's over there salivating. Oh, and well, John Hutton too. So now now that's where I reached the end of what I know for a fact. I believe that
And
we
I'm not
purchased
trying-
from the school district.
We do.
Okay, and I'm not trying to give you guys a hard time. I'm just asking questions because I'm curious. That's
Yeah.
all.
So the short answer is yes, we have a cooperative purchasing agreement with the school district.
Okay.
We pay below market rate because we do get it bulk.
Okay.
However, we are subject to the volatility of the market. We pay on the weekly average is how the school district pays for it, and then how we in turn pay the school district back. So yeah, we've seen gasoline prices go up significantly in the last 6 months. But we do, to Steve's point, we do not have a tank. So we do not have the ability to buy capacity in advance. With the amount of fuel that we use on a regular basis, we would need a really big tank to make it fiscally worth
Right.
that anyway. We go through about 30,000 gallons of fuel in a month.
Okay.
So to put it in perspective,
How much fuel does a gas station contain underneath the gas?
it varies. An average one's about 7,500.
Okay, so you'd need a lot more than a gas station carries
Yeah.
then. Okay, thank you.
Great questions. Thank you.
You're tapping into the brain trust of the whole team here. Thank you. And thank you, EJ.
All right, if there's no other question, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I gotta get there. I move to forward the proposed ordinance to the June 7, 2022 council meeting for public hearing and first reading of the proposed ordinance.
I'll second that. If there's no other question or discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The matter passed 2-0. Thank you. You have the next one. Steve?
Uh-oh, where's Steve?
Yes, sir. The last item is our monthly financial report, and we have staff in the room that goes on vacation the moment this agenda item is done, so I will try to be brief, but I want to be thorough. I would like to start a new phase. As I just mentioned, staff has been working for a couple of months. We've been looking at the 2023-24 budget. So I want to start including a little bit of new material that I will bring you every month, and like I've been bringing revenue, just because I want you to be very familiar with the revenues and expenses of the city. As a governance body, these are the questions that you want me to answer anyway. You want to know if we're spending on track, if our revenue's coming in as expected, how's the cash and cash flow, and what do we want to be thinking? And so I want to be briefing you with that information so that when it comes down to the study sessions for our budget, we don't just start then, we want to start now. As we tell you every month, we always do give you a read that so far, 4 months into the year, our revenues are favorable and our expenditures are favorable. And the interesting thing is, I can show you, green and red indicators and numbers, and I try to show graphs to show how much revenue is favorable. However, there's a major revenue piece that just doesn't come in 1/12 every month, and that's property tax, because there's the 2 major months where everybody gets their property tax bills. So that just doesn't come out cleanly. However, we look at it every single month, and so I don't really, but we also expect by the end of the year, we generally get fully what was levied, and if we don't, it'll come the following year when property changes hands or something like that. Expenses, however, you can see are very narrowly under budget. So I'd like to talk about that and just start planting the seeds for some new information. The general fund. If I show, now all of these, this is a graph that shows every single one of the departments in the general fund, and they really could be all the same color, but I've turned all the ones that are slightly over budget red. What do I mean by over budget? We're 4 months into the year, so we think we should be at 33% if everything was even. And so we've got 5 departments there that look like they're over budget, but I'm not worried, and I'd like to tell you why. For example, the court has got a major expenditure. It's an annual expense, and they pay it once a year. So if we pay it at the first of the year, that that expense line, it's not going to go over budget. It's just paid early. We don't pay it 1/12 every month. So I think that the rest of their expenses are really, if they manage, we come out fine. And the same is true. Human Resources has got some recruiting. There's some annual things that it's very efficient for them to. I think there's probably a discount if they pay it early. City Council, have I ever come to you and told you that you're over budget and we need to talk?
No, you haven't.
We have an association of Washington City's dues that we pay once a year. We've already paid it. And that's, I don't know, is that 80% of your budget, and that expense is done? So the rest is pretty manageable, your travel and whatnot. It's just not a worry to us. So if you can feel comfortable with your own department, you can feel comfortable with the others. There's the Lakehaven Utility District. We pay them quarterly. And in April, we paid the second quarter, so that kind of shoots that graph up until the next 2 months catch up. And then police is ever so slightly over budget because their timing of their purchases of clothing and SWAT training is ahead of what you would consider if you did it 1/12 every single month. Now, this is only looking at the expenses on a percentage basis, and I've already pointed out one flaw in doing that. What if we look at just the dollars, if we compare the actual dollars with the budget for each department? And does this picture paint a little bit different picture? City Council is no longer my biggest concern, is it? Now, in every budget, you see a pie chart, and we already know that that the public safety budget is a large slice of the pie. However, how is it doing compared to budget? You know, we went through last year's budget process, and we'd look at all the revenue that was available to the city, and we allocated across all the departments, and they made their staffing and supplies and travel and training decisions. Now they have to manage to it. And so these two graphs, I wanted to give you a different way to look at the city's budget and how everybody's managing. They are all managing. I'm pretty confident that every single department is going to be able to manage within their budget. But looking at how they're doing as a percentage or dollars makes a big difference, doesn't it? So all of the departments are within budget, except for the 5 I've mentioned and the one that the 5 that I mentioned. I'm pretty comfortable with, but I need to share that with you so that you have the same understanding. If I never tell you, you wouldn't know. So to summarize, each department manages to their annual budget. They still have to respond to various service needs. Councilman Norton, to your point, they still have to respond to gas prices and live within their budget, and that includes police, and that's, you know, parks and public works are the ones that are most acutely aware of that one. They also have to kind of forecast the rest of the year. E.J. Walsh has to look at the weather in December and decide if he thinks he's going to make, you know, be within budget for the snow and ice remediation, or if he has to do some juggling between lines. So it's a bit of an art, a bit of a science. Each department has some latitude within their own budget. Citywide, the mayor has got latitude to do some juggling across departments, and if we can't manage the future as we see it within those areas, that's when we come to council and we say we need to dip into reserves or make some transfers between budget. So that's just kind of planting the seeds, showing you what we're going to be talking about as we start looking at the following biennium. Now, I want to give you some reassurances, because if we're concerned about the economy, if we're concerned about recession, sales tax, not only is the funding one of the biggest funding, the scale on this graph shows that we're going to be expecting a budget of just north of 16 million. And are we on track? Well, this comes to us on a 2-month lag from the state. So I've only got 3 data points, January, February, and March. But we're ahead almost to $250,000 on a budget of $4 million for those 3 months. So far so good. And I'm going to continue to bring this to you every single month, and I feel like a broken record, but I would be remiss if I didn't give you an update every single month. On sales tax, here's a little bit more of a trend. If I take the 3 months of the current year and compare it to the same 3 months for all the prior years, well, that kind of gives you a sense of a 6-month trend, but we're only looking for the first 3 months. If I want to forecast a little bit further and go into 23, 24, well, I would be foolish to only look at 3 months of data for each year. We do have 12 months of the year. And I can tell you that for the past however many years there are in the blue bars, those are all actuals. And we can see what sales tax, which is an indicator of our economy, have increased year over year for the last 4 years. And we can see in 2020 the impact of COVID there. 2021 came back. 2022, I've only got 3 months of actual, but we're on track at the moment to be 5% over last year. Now, the following percents, those are just plain old placeholders for now. Do I really think in 23, 4, and 5 we're going to see those percents? I don't know, but you can see I have the tool, and we can have the discussion. We can talk about it with departments. We can talk with economic development or the whoever, and we can start projecting the actual dollars. I've got the dollar amounts there in the very bottom row, kind of rounded to thousands. So as we get further along in the next few months and we get closer to the budget, we'll be talking more about this. Property tax revenue, there's 2 factors. There's the top graph shows the underlying assessed property value. That's what King County assesses, and in the last 3 years, they increased the underlying assessed property value in the city of Federal Way 6%, 6%, 13%. But the annual levy didn't, because by state statute, existing property values are capped. Now, there's a little bit more than a 1% increase the last couple of years, and that's because there's some new construction. So that isn't capped at 1%. So it will behoove me to pay attention to what's going on in our planning department, see what's being approved, and see what we think is going to be happening over the next couple of years there.
I have a question about property tax.
Yes, please.
Do we ever get a percentage of properties that have not paid their taxes? Do we ever find out as a city?
That is a legal process, and we do. My experience isn't with King County, it's with Yakima County, but still, for example, if a property goes into foreclosure, it has a lien on it, you have to wait until the property is sold, and that's when we do get it collected. So most of our property we get in the current year, some we don't, but then we're also getting some property taxes this year that might have been for previous years. So I don't want to call that negligible, but it's not. I don't think it's particularly material.
Okay, so we generally don't know.
I think King County is a large enough county that I don't know if they have the capacity to give each city that kind of detailed information, or if they did, how thick of a report it would be. I'm comfortable looking at the numbers that we get, the remittances that we get.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, that's a great question, because you want to know how it works. Utility tax revenue, I don't have much news. I just want to continue to point out that it's above budget.
Director Groom, so since we're talking about some specific taxes, can we go back to sales tax for just a minute?
Sure can.
Also, in your report, you have the, by different area, area of the city, the tax, sales
Yes.
tax revenue. The question with online sales, I mean, when I buy something on Amazon, I'm paying the full 10 whatever %.
Okay, you know
How does that come back to the city of residence of the purchaser?
Yeah, you've asked this before, and I was afraid you'd ask it again, so I prepared a slide, and it's not particularly pretty, but I'll show it to you. I got an unsatisfying answer, and I'll show you why.
I suspect that a major part of the sales in the city is now online rather than through brick and mortar stores.
And I suspect so too, and I can't. Here's the data that we have. I'll show you. This has got. See, this isn't really particularly formatted well, but it shows 3 months of data and then a total. This is the level of detail that we get. One reason is because it's proprietary information. I'm not, the city will get fined if we show specific retailers. For example, we see building material and garden. I'm not going to say the names of those, but you can probably guess what those are. Same thing with general merchandise stores. I've got these sorted in largest dollar to smallest dollar. The third box from the bottom is non-store retailers. Now, you can't tell me that that is our total online sales because our general merchandise stores do online sales. Our building and material stores do online sales. Our electronics stores do online sales, and they don't capture the data and give it to me. So if I go by the report and say, Councilman Walsh, it looks like 4% of our retail sales is online, I don't even believe that myself.
Yeah, I mean, how does the state's collecting the tax,
It is, and if you're.
and that 3.5% that should be coming to Federal Way,
Yes, and
I mean, are we,
And I believe it is. And if you're Walmart, just to pick a name, you know what percentage of your sales tax it is, and it's being remitted, and it goes to the state. They just don't give us the split out. We can get by retailer the dollar amount, but the retailer doesn't tell us how much is online and how much isn't.
but, well, with Amazon, it's 100% online. And I would dare say I
Yeah.
bet that there's more Amazon sales than,
Yeah.
I'd say that the Amazon sales is more or greater than the
Yeah.
the brick and mortar Costco sales.
Right, so our recourse is to get into auditing, which we can possibly do. So I wanted to show you that I tried. And I think we got more work to do there. But that's the data that we've got at the moment. And you agree with, oh, see, give me a job. I can handle the technology here, I really can. There, and I'll do screen share to make our online, there we are. There, so you and I don't believe that 4% is an accurate number, and we've got some more work to do. But your question is, are we collecting it here? Is it going to the point of order, the point of delivery? And off the top of my head, it seems to me it's the point of delivery that is allowed to collect the sales tax, and is our Department of Revenue on top of that? I'll get back to you.
Okay. All right, thank you. I think that's something
Yeah.
that we should be very aware of,
Yeah.
because as time goes on, a greater percentage of sales is going to be online also.
Sure.
And we need to make sure that we are receiving the appropriate.
Yeah, we would be foolish to overlook it, yeah. And is the cost of audit maybe worth what we could, I mean, generally auditors get a percentage of what they find, and we are very happy that they do. Because then from that point onward, the suspect is caught and has to continue to remit, yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Certainly.
Steve, I seem to remember that with that kind of a tax, it's the point of sale. So for example, if you're going to buy a washer dryer, it comes from a warehouse in Kent, and that's where the sales tax goes, to that point of sale.
There was some legislation and it changed, and I can't remember
Yeah,
which way it went.
I
Yeah.
don't think so, because if you buy something from out of state now,
I'm
we
paying
now
Washington
get,
sales tax.
we still pay Washington sales tax.
We do.
Even if
Yeah.
if it's coming from another state.
I remember
Yeah.
a few years, a big discussion about it. It may have changed, but maybe we should look into that, the point
Yeah.
of sale versus,
I'm hearing more than a quorum direct staff to look into this, thank you.
yeah, and then probably do some kind of,
Sure.
figure out how to do an audit.
Sure.
Yeah.
And in generally, the big corporations are generally good about following it. They've got the staff and the legal and the accounting staffs to follow all of the rules that they're supposed to, but that would be an assumption, wouldn't it?
I think that I'm more concerned, I mean, because it all is remitted to the state. I'm more concerned about the state not giving us,
Identifying
identifying
State.
where it should be
The-
going
the zip
than
code.
the retailer.
Sure.
I mean, the retailer, I think they're remitting it to the state, I think. It's the state that I'm concerned about.
It warms my heart that you are joining me in stewarding the resources of the city penny by penny. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it possible for you to ask the post office to send you, I think what I heard before is you said that the retailers are not giving you the information on what they're sending via mail. Is that correct? Or online sales? Is that something that you're not receiving?
No, our
or-
database comes from the Washington State Department of Revenue.
And you trust them?
They are my collector.
Okay.
They collect my tax, just like King County collects my property tax, so,
My question is.
right?
Just as someone who's nosy, is it possible that do you have the authority to call Amazon and say, hey, Amazon, how much business do you do in these zip codes? Hey, Lowe's, how much business do you send to this zip code? And just kind of compile your own, just, with some big box retailers, Costco. I personally cannot believe this, but I got a thank you notification from Amazon because in 2021, I spent $40,000 with Amazon. So I'm looking at this going, well, if I spent that much, and I'm just one
Yeah.
person, and you're getting 4% of that, this isn't adding up to me.
Yeah.
So I'm just asking, I know I'm, of course, asking you to do more work, but is that something that you think
Well-
that you could challenge and say, well, this is the information we've compiled from the retailers, this doesn't match what you're showing us, state of Washington?
One of the real legalities, one of the protections that retailers have is their proprietary information. They don't want their competitors, and they have a right to have their business be private. They have a requirement to comply with the legal statutes, which is why the Department of Revenue has a lot more clout than I do. And if I were to call up, they would have no reason to tell me. I don't have much clout on my own, but I think we do have the mechanisms to get to the root of what you're asking. I just can't. I
Can't
wouldn't-
you sign an
Yeah.
agreement that you won't disclose the information to anyone else, or?
I have to with the state to even get the database, yeah. Actually, the mayor does, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Delighted to share with you how things work, and nothing's easy. Very briefly, real estate excise tax is both a reflection of the property values in the market and the volume of transactions, and so that's looking good. The cash balance, I am only going to show you that the cash balance is still healthy. We continue to do investing. Enough said. You've heard that many times. So for the third month now, we've heard that inflation is above 7%. The Fed has now said that they're going to make not 0.25% rate increases, but 0.5% increases. As you've all recognized, we really have to consider inflation. We've got a few more months before we really get into serious budgeting, but we are really have a heightened sense of paying attention because there's some uncertainty. If economics is cyclical, we're going to have to think 30 months out. To conclude, the whole point of me bringing this to you once a month is to say we're on track with budget. Every department has got a real thin margin for flexing service levels. They're managing to their budgets. We're monitoring revenues. We're also monitoring the economic climate and the cycle. And with that, I hope you feel briefed. You can feel free to ask me more questions. I really do enjoy the dialogue because as we gear up to budget, it really helps us to start earlier than wait till study sessions in October. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Deputy Mayor?
So the utility tax rebate, you processed one already. How many more do you have to process?
Can I ask a friend? Chase, do you happen to know?
We had the 19 as the last meeting, and I
Right.
don't have a new count on that, but we can get that information and let you know.
I'd like to know that. I'm
Yeah,
sure everyone
and
would.
we're coming up on the deadlines, so the people that mail it right before the deadline, who
May
knows?
May 30th,
Yeah.
yeah, is the deadline,
Yeah.
so we'll know.
Okay, but we have more than 19,
Yes.
I'm hearing, okay.
Thank you for rooting for our citizens.
So the ADP, it says ADP for April will be available in the May 2022 report, which is this report,
ADP.
average daily population.
This is the April report.
This is April, oh, okay.
Yeah, and so during the May report, we'll have the April numbers for the ADP.
As we close the books for May, yeah. Accounting, we think 1 month behind, sorry.
Okay.
Ready?
Thank you.
Ready?
I think there's no
Okay.
more questions, so.
That's it? Okay.
Yep, that's it.
I move to forward the April 2022 monthly financial report to the June 7, 2022 consent agenda for approval.
Now, second that. I don't think we have any other questions. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. This matter passed 2-0. Thank you, Steve. And that is the last item for today's meeting. Our next meeting is going to be on June 28, 2022 at 5 p.m. And it is going to be here as well as on Zoom, I would assume. Great. Well, with that, thank you, council members, thank you, staff, and thank you, public, for watching. This meeting now concluded. Thank you.
Thank you, bye.